What's going on, YouTube? It's David from Dealer Tech, and today we are taking on the $40 home server project. That's right, just a few weeks ago, I bought a PowerEdge T420 server off of the Facebook Marketplace, and it came with basically all of the hardware needed to boot it up and get going. All it was missing was a hard drive. However, I wanted to have some fun with this build, so I went and took this $40 server and got some pretty good hardware upgrades that we're going to check out and put inside of the server. So that's what we're doing today. I guess this is sort of a budget build, sort of rating Facebook Marketplace and seeing the best deals that we can find. I think most people can afford $40 for a server, and then getting a little crazy and probably just a bit stupid with it and throwing in some of the best hardware that the T420 can accept. So I'm not sure how you'll feel about this video. Some people might be looking for a purely budget build. They're not going to be happy with the outcome. Some people like the more higher end builds. They're not going to be that impressed with the outcome of this video, but all that being said, it'll be a fun project to work on. We'll get to see how well we can get this T420 to perform, and I have a lot of applications that I could really use this additional server for. So enough talking, let's jump in. We are back on the operating table, ready to perform some surgery on our PowerEdge T420 server. So of course we have the machine here, and we also have our upgrades as well. So let's quickly run through our hardware upgrades. To kick things off, we've got our 8 sticks of 16 gigabyte DDR3 RAM. We've got 2 Xeon processors. Now, the T420 currently only has 1 CPU, so we'll be adding a heatsink to go along with that additional CPU that we're throwing in. We've also got 1 boot drive to install today. This is a 2.5-inch solid-state drive, 1 terabyte. And to fit that SSD, we have this adapter, this 2.5-inch to 3.5-inch hard drive adapter. I will, of course, be adding more hard drives down the road, but this will just get us started. One thing to note, which is kind of a bummer about this T420, it does not have the hot swappable drives, so I need to go inside the server to swap out hard drives. It's not like my T430 or my R720XD where I have those hot plug hard drives that I can just easily swap in and out, but that's probably a big reason why this thing is only 40 bucks. All right, we looked at the CPUs, we've looked at all of the RAM. We'll wrap things up with this RAID controller. I believe this is an H330. It could be an H310 RAID controller, Perc H330 or Perc H310. This came from my T430 server, so I'm using that after I upgraded my RAID controller in the T430. Now, one thing is I don't have my backplate. I had to use the existing backplate for my upgraded RAID controller. So I might be committing some sort of cardinal sin here by installing the RAID controller before I have the mount. So I could see why that could potentially be disastrous. But I have ordered the little metal plate to screw into the back of the server, and I'll be very careful to make sure this isn't bumping around, and hopefully it doesn't get removed from its PCI slot. So a little bit of a dangerous decision there, but it is what it is. Okay, we have our thermal paste, we've got our alcohol to clean up the existing CPU, remove it, and then insert the new CPUs. We should be good to go there. Now let's open her up. There we go. With the cover off, we can see what we got for 40 bucks from the Facebook Marketplace. Everything that's in here right now is exactly what I purchased for $40, in addition to 4 extra 900 gig SAS drives that he threw in, but I'm not going to be using those. There's only 4 bays here, So I really need to maximize my storage, and I already have one of these bays being occupied for the boot drive. So really I just have 3 hard drive bays here. I need big drives. I'm going to go with probably 16 terabyte drives. 900 gigs just wouldn't work, and I didn't really want to finagle the adapters necessary for those SAS drives due to their limited capacity. Beyond that, you can see 4 sticks of RAM currently installed. I think these are either 4 or 8 gig sticks. Let's take a look and find out. Yeah, so these are 4 gigabyte sticks that are existing. We're going to be replacing that with 8 sticks of 16 gigabyte RAM DDR3. I did come to realize there's actually 12 RAM slots, so perhaps I should be adding 4 more sticks of RAM. I'll have to look into that. Regardless, we have 8 sticks, 16 gigabytes going in here. We can see there's 1 heatsink. That's because there's only 1 CPU currently installed. We'll open that up and take a look at what that CPU is, because to tell you the truth, I don't remember. After that, we'll be cleaning off the existing socket, and then we'll be putting in our 2 new Xeon CPUs, adding our new heatsink. Of course, we'll have the RAM, we'll have our boot drive, and then to close everything off, we'll be installing our RAID controller, and this will go into one of the PCI slots. We'll connect the RAID controller with our boot drive, and that will be it. That will be all of the hardware upgrades that we'll do today. We'll move over and begin installing the OS. In with the new RAM, we have these 16 gigabyte sticks here, and we're going to install them in all of the white slots first. So we'll occupy 3 white slots, and then move into 1 set of black slots to correctly place the RAM here. There we go. 8 sticks of 16 gig RAM installed in the T420 with a few extra slots still available. Time to put some elbow grease into this existing CPU. She's on there tight. We'll try the big guns. A little bit of a beefier screwdriver. Yeah! Someone tell iFixit they need to upgrade the girth of their screwdriver. Voila! Here is our old Xeon CPU. We can see the existing thermal paste on it. So next we're going to go ahead and take it out of its socket. Nice and gently. Here's a look at the old CPU. And once we get this thermal paste off, we'll be able to know what it actually is. We're going to clean the crud off of our heatsink and the old processor. Looks clean enough to me. What do you think? All cleaned up. We can see this is an Intel Xeon E5 2407, 2.2 gigahertz, made from Costa Rica. Shout out Costa Rica. So we've cleaned up our old CPU. Just, I think, best practice. I might sell this on eBay for a couple dollars someday, or add it to an even cheaper server build down the road. And then, of course, our cleaned up heatsink, which means we're ready to install our new CPUs. Let's go. Let's unbox our Xeon CPUs and take a look at what we're working with. Here are our upgraded CPUs. These are Xeon E5 2470s at 2.3 gigahertz and 8 cores each. So we'll go ahead and throw these in right now. We're going to start with CPU 1 and then move over to CPU 2 after that. And you can see we have a little plastic cover panel on right now. We'll go ahead and remove that when it's time to install the new CPU. As always, we need to match the gold corner here to the white corner shown, or the white triangle shown on our server. So we'll nice and gently place our CPU. Let's close her up. Some old thermal paste, remove that. With the new CPU installed, we're ready to put on our thermal paste. We start with a dollop of our thermal paste. This is the Corsair XTM50. And we'll just put a little dupe right on top of the CPU. Now we are ready to place our existing heatsink back on. Looks like we are in business with CPU 1. Let's move over to CPU 2. For CPU 2, we're going to pop open the container and then remove our plastic filler panel that's in there right now, and then place our processor. We have the black piece successfully removed, ready for our processor placement. And again, we have white triangle and gold corner. Boom. That looks right to me. Next up, thermal paste and then placement of our heatsink on top. Thermal paste, a little dab will do ya. Next on the list is going to be our RAID controller. This will be a fairly easy install. We'll just slap it into an open PCI slot, which all of our PCI slots are open. And the only issue we are going to run into is that we don't have our backplate. And so the entire RAID controller is going to be supported by only its placement inside of its CPI slot or PCI slot. Typically, we would remove one of these back panels, but since I'm not installing a mount this time, maybe I won't have to. There we go. We have installed the RAID controller. I chose the second from the bottom, or second from the top, as far as placement in its PCI slot, and I did that because it will be easy access for our cables here. And now the final component of our build, initial storage. We have the MX500 SSD by Crucial, and this is a 2.5 edge SSD, so we need this Easy Convert Series 2.5 inch to 3.5 inch hard drive adapter by IcyDock, and basically this just allows us to install a 2.5 inch drive into a 3.5 inch bay. So pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and unbox this. We will start with the Easy Convert, our adapter, black box, and we'll open it by lift top and push with the other hand to open. Boom. Spring operated or spring loaded. Inside we have screws that will fasten to our hard drive bay here. So concept is pretty simple. SSD goes inside of the adapter box, and then we put the top back on and then screw it in. After that, we have these cables here, which will connect our RAID controller to the SSD or to our hard drives. Unboxing the MX500 SSD. SSD. Time to place our SSD inside of this caddy here. Our SSD is inside of the caddy. Let's go ahead and put the top of the case back on and then place it inside of the server. Boom. We've thrown the lid on our SSD and its enclosure. Now we're going to stick it inside of the bay of our T420. To fasten our hard drive, we actually need to remove this interior bay here. And this inside shell will be taken out. Then we'll screw in the hard drive and then place this back inside. Came right out. Now we're going to screw right here on both sides. We have screwed in the hard drive. Now let's put the cage back in the server. Surprise, surprise, the cables I have here aren't going to connect my RAID controller to my hard drive. So I'm going to go with the existing cabling, and I actually feel more confident about that because I think we'll be able to boot this way. So we have these cables here and these cables here. Before we go ahead and plug them into our boot drive, I'm going to remove the RAID controller. And I will install the RAID controller again after I get this thing booted up. And then I get the firmware for the RAID controller. So that's probably, honestly, the best way to tackle this. Now we're going to move over to the cables and plug them in. We're in bay 0, so we will find the 0 cables and plug those in. Then the 1, 2, and 3s, those are for the future hard drives. And that was pretty simple. We have HD0 plugged in, 2 cables. Looks good to me. This means we are ready to fire up our server for the first time. I am super, super excited. So We'll see if this journey that we've just taken together pans out first try, or maybe I'll need to go back to the drawing board. We'll find out in a sec. Time to put the covers back on and then plug her in. Panning around the home lab, and we can see Proxmox is live with the summary of our new PowerEdge T420 server, which is chugging along down here right now, not yet in its permanent location. And then we have a monitor sitting on top of my T430, and we've got the terminal of the T420 live right now. So let's jump into Proxmox and check things out. We have successfully booted Proxmox onto the T420 PowerEdge server, so I'm very happy about that. We can see 128 gigs of RAM. We can see the two Xeon E5 2470 processors. Things are looking really good. Right now, I haven't added any additional virtual machines, and I'm going to wait until I begin expanding my storage space before I do that. But it's a great sign to see everything functioning properly. I also did diagnostic testing for the hardware in my BIOS and lifecycle controller. Everything's looking really good. I do have an amber flashing light on the front case of the server, so I need to dig into the logs and see what's going on there. But regardless, I'd say this has been a success. To wrap things up today, let's go over the final costs of my $40 server build. So starting from the top here, my matched set of Xeon E5 2470 processors was $43. My additional heatsink was $17. The metal clip for my RAID controller was $6. Again, that hasn't been delivered yet. And I'm not factoring in the cost of my RAID controller because it came with my PowerEdge T430, but I think I could buy it on eBay for like $35. The crucial 1TB SSD was $87 for one. I got 3 total for some other projects coming up. Then I got 2 orders of 16 gigabyte RAM, 8 sticks total, and that was $80 for all of the RAM. The PowerEdge T420 server was $40 from Facebook Marketplace, which brings the total cost to $275. Now that's a lot more than $40, but I think it could possibly still be considered a budget build. Let me know in the comments if you think I'm wrong. And I'm not saying that you couldn't find much newer hardware, a newer server for around the same price or less money. I'm very sure that you could, but this has been a great build, and the T420 in this configuration will be an awesome addition to my home lab setup, and I'm really excited to show you guys how I'm integrating it with the rest of my equipment. On that note, we'll go ahead and close out for the day. Thank you so much for joining me, and stay tuned for more really cool home lab upgrades coming soon. Cheers, guys.